Welcome to A Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn, and today I've got Lashaude back with me. Welcome back to the show, Lashaude.
Hello, hello.
You were in a connection hour, which is kind of like a TED Talk the other day, talking about a book, and I want to jump right into that. That you caught my attention. Our producer, Nathan, was there as well, and he actually texted me. He's like, this would be a great podcast episode. Yeah. So let's go to it. Let's talk about what you shared the other day.
Yeah, so the book is called Emotionally Healthy Leadership by Pete Scazzero, I think his name is. And one of the chapters near the end, it's broken up into the inner life and the outer life. And the outer life, he talks about endings and new beginnings and power and wise boundaries. And so in my small business, I had some employee turnover, and normally that means I have to pay to train up new people, and it adds another 15 to 20 hours to my schedule. But after reading that book, Endings and New Beginnings, I started to realize that this was actually a pruning process so that the business could be more fruitful. And it was actually the best possible way for this to happen. Even though I only had a 9-day notice on that person leaving, and they've been with me for like 3 years, I was still able to pivot and make it into something that was good for the business overall. So, yeah. And I think I learned in that process that I'm not supposed to be friends with my coworkers, and I'm supposed to be friendly, right? Mm-hmm. And specifically, I have a teammate that needs like an older brother, kind of a father figure, and I started finding myself filling that role. Mm-hmm. But then I realized I'm not supposed to be your father. I could be fatherly, I could be brotherly, I could be friendly, but ultimately you need me to be a good boss. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the major takeaway from that book, and from my experience as I'm reading these chapters and I'm looking at the turnover in my business. That was kind of one of my big takeaways.
I met a lot of leaders, and I've done it myself, even some of the stuff you've already mentioned, where we often say, well, I wear a lot of hats, mm-hmm. right? And normally that means I wear a lot of hats in business tasks or functions. But after hearing you share that, and I want to unpack this a bit more, is we tend to wear a lot of hats relationally. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's okay, and sometimes it's not. So unpack a little bit more about, you've kind of mm-hmm. set up the stage, but let's go down that a little deeper. Where were you finding yourself in this? Well, this particular scenario, or just in general, and what are some of the things you started learning recently?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people who are listening right now, you've probably had an employee where you knew they needed a father figure because they didn't have a father figure in their life, and slowly but surely your for-profit organization that has a clear team, mission statement, and vision statement kind of starts to become this charity for this person, and you're hoping like, okay, how do I use this business to love this person well? Like, I know they need positive male leadership, so yes, I'm their boss, but also I'm trying to train them and mentor them. For those of you who see work as spiritual formation, you might notice that you can use your job to help disciple people in the ways of Jesus before you start talking about salvation and eternal, like where you're going to spend eternity. You can teach them not to lie and how to have integrity. And so I say all that to say, you find yourself wearing all those different hats. Like, I'm supposed to minister to you. So like, does that make me your discipler, but I'm also your boss? Or you need strong male leadership. So, am I like a dad to you, but I'm also your boss? And then there's that dual relationship that creates these weird like conflicts. And so I was in that exact situation. This young man that was with my business was with me for 3 years. We started doing 10-man coaching. So I paid for him to actually go and get counseling services. And I said, you can do as many sessions as you want. It's just going to be a part of your benefits package. Mm. Because of that, he starts developing self-awareness, starts to be able to explain himself more. And I really saw myself like speaking identity into his life. I had him do a skills assessment, and I was able to tell him exactly what he's been wired to be good at and what his giftings are. Mm-hmm. I think I used the Clifton Strengths Assessment, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the first time he's had someone look at him and tell him, this is what your strengths are. This is what's carried you throughout your career so far. And he was able to recognize that. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, I was speaking identity into him. I was helping him sift through his thoughts and emotions. And I saw myself as someone, hopefully, that was shepherding him more towards Jesus and towards God. He starts attending church more. He starts considering marriage as a better way of living relationally. And I'm hitting all these milestones, and I'm like, this is amazing, right? But at the end of the day, I had to be reminded, I am not your pastor. Mm-hmm. I am your boss. and I can shepherd you and care for you. I can care for you as anyone would, but I'm not your pastor. I'm your boss, right? You need an actual pastor, and I can't put that hat on. And I think the saddest part is when we notice people in our businesses that need relational support, whether that be they need family, they need friends, they need a dad, they need a pastor, they need a companion, even like a good companion. We might feel the need to fill those roles, and they've attached themselves to us in that way for what they need in their life. And so what I've had to learn is not to try to fill that role completely, push them back into the communities that they might be avoiding. So like, you need to go join a church and commit to a local body. You need to go reconcile with your father. You probably should call your friends back because you're going to need them at some point in time. You need to go back and form these healthy relationships for yourself and allow me to run in my lane, which is your boss. You only have one of me. You're going to have 3 friends. You're going to have mom and dad. You're going to have, maybe a pastor or some sort of spiritual leader, but you have one boss. And so in order for me to do my job well, I have to push you back into the arms of the rest of community, which I think God put all of those things in our lives to shape us, and it's for our good. But I'm not supposed to wear all of those hats. And so I guess the way I frame it in my head is I can be pastoral, but I'm still your boss. I can be brotherly and friendly and fatherly even, but I'm still your boss. And so,
how did you, since this is fresh, excuse me, how did you, what was kind of the wrestle for you, or the ahas? Like, what'd that look like over the hours, days, or weeks that it really became revelatory to you? It went from just words on a page to something you're embracing. What was that journey like and it's recent, right? I mean,
this is within the past 14 days. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
This aha moment, it's it's hard to explain. I actually went to bed thinking about power and wise boundaries. And in the book, Emotionally Healthy Leadership, he actually lays out why it's impossible to be, why it's very difficult to be friends with employees. It was based on a study that was done, and I can't remember the study, but you can look at the book yourself. And it basically said, if you look at the tenets of a friendship, like what makes a friendship a good friendship, a relationship between a boss and employee doesn't have those things. For example, equality, like shared power structure, a choice of friendship. Like all of those things are what, if you think of any of your close friends, you don't have to be their friend. You don't feel obligated to be their friend. You choose them, and they choose you. And when it comes to the power you both have on like where to eat or what to do for, a hangout, you both share equal say. You can't just come in and say, it's just you. And so when you have someone who's your employee, those things don't exist. If I say I want to go to a certain place, they're going to defer to me as their leader and as their boss, and it's not going to be this mutual submission in the way of like, oh, we're just 2 equal friends on equal footing. Even when you start talking practically, a good friend gives to you and you give to them, right? Like the gifts are normally of equal value because you're in the same stage of life. You have like this agreed upon give and take. Well, as your employee, I have the power to, up your income by 30 or 40%, which would be a huge, great gift, right? You can't do that to me. You can't give me that gift. If I give you a bonus or I go buy something for you, even if I just bought something for you that's not even work related, like a watch or something, well, I might be able to buy you a $200 watch. You can't afford to do that for me. So immediately, it creates a system to where friendship isn't the same. And so,
great example.
Yeah, you can't be friends. I hate to say you can't be friends, but it's very awkward. If you try to live it out and work it out, you'll realize very quickly the power dynamics are just too great in order for true friendship and everything that we love about friendship to hold true.
Well, as you're sharing that, I'm thinking of one of my favorite bosses over the years, and we could go into a meeting, just the 2 of us or with other people, and we could be friends for a few minutes. In other words, laugh, tell a joke, talk about what's going on in politics or the world or whatever. He was sharp-witted, and I enjoy a good pun, and we'd just be going, and then we'd be going along, and he'd go, oh, it's time to get to work.
Yeah. And
most people observing that conversation would have been offended by how quickly we went from being friends to being boss and an employee, right? But that was just, I understood the power dynamic, whether I could have articulated as well as you just did, that he wasn't my friend, although I considered him one of my in your terms, more friendly bosses, right? And certainly have affection, think of our relationship fondly, and outside of work, might even consider him a friend. But, and now that he's not my boss, I do consider him more of a friend, and we've stayed in contact, close contact. So, but I love how you said that earlier about I can be friendly, right? And that it sounds subtle, but it's huge.
Yeah, it's a subtle. It is huge, because when I say the difference between I'm your friend and I'm versus friendly, right, is that the role I play in your life is that of a boss, a friendly boss, but that's the role I play. And I like using the word role because it's temporary, it's theatrical in a nature. Like you understand that this is a temporary theater that we're playing on. You're not always going to be my employee, and I'm not always going to be your boss. And in eternity future, we might not have an employee-boss relationship. Maybe in the next 10 years, we might not have an employee-boss relationship.
Or in this case, in 9 days.
In 9 days, exactly, right? But for the time that I am in this role and you're in this role, there are certain scripts and lines that we need to go by for your good and for our good and for the good of the entire company.
I know it's all fresh, so you may not have had time to process all this, but what's your thoughts around, do you have this conversation with your employees?
Yeah.
I mean, now that you've got this revelation, do you pull each one aside in your one-on-ones and say, hey, something that dawned on me recently as I was reading this book, and like, if I've ever done this or conveyed this, I'm realizing now that probably wasn't a healthy way for us to interact. What are your thoughts around like course corrections or education or?
Yeah, I did it all the wrong way, and now I have to recorrect it. So I used to say things like, hey, we're a family, like we're a family here. And if you go on social media, you realize a lot of employees realize very quickly we are not a family. And they'll tell you all the jokes on what makes this game that we're playing of boss and employee not a family. And they're 100% right. And so recently I've had to change my language from saying we're a family to say we're a team, right? And then now, even more recently, I've had to explicitly tell people the way I love you best is playing the role of your boss. You do not need me to be your friend because you have friends, or you should have friends, and you need me to be a good boss. You need me to set clear direction. You need me to be very explicit on like the goals of the company and how you measure up and give you good feedback. And those are things you wouldn't want from a friend. I would hope your friends don't give you performance evaluations. You need that from me. You don't need that from your friends, right? I would hope that if you're struggling at your job, you can talk to your friends, but
in a way you can't.
In a way that you can't talk to me, right? And I know. Again, even if you think about some of the fallacies we have of like, oh, there's an open door policy, you can tell me anything. No, you can't tell me anything. There's a long list of things.
That's why there's chaplains and counselors and
because everyone has a role, and if we understand the importance of these roles, however temporary, they're very important. If we understand the importance of these roles, then we don't have to have weird moments where you confess something to me that's a fireable offense, and I'm responsible to the larger company to make a decision that a friend wouldn't make, but a boss has to make. And if I don't set, like I said, like you said, if I don't reset those expectations, you're going to be very upset when I do something as a boss that a friend would never do. And so now I have to be really clear with them that the way I love you the most is to stay in my lane and play my role as your boss. And we're not going to be together in this role forever. But a friend would do something that a boss would do differently. And they know that. And now I'm just more explicit about that. And so it just makes it more clear for everyone.
Yeah, and it feels more authentic too, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's people trust. We heard at the Global Leadership Summit last year, trust is at an all-time low in every institution, whether that be business or government or religion. Every institution, trust is at an all-time low. This seems like it actually boosts it, having those conversations and say, I want to be a friendly boss. I want to be a caring boss. I want to be a loving boss. I do care that you do or don't have friends. I do care that you do or don't have family. Within my ability, I can help you make perhaps some of those connections or find those connections, or at least encourage you to find those connections. But I can't be that guy.
And I'm not going to pretend to be that to manipulate us into a deeper relationship. And now I'm struggling internally with how do I balance the profits of this company with the profitability of your, like how your soul is profiting. And I have, there are situations where I should fire you because you're terrible for the business, and you need to learn that your actions are not acceptable. And the only way for you to come to that revelation is for you to be penalized, demoted, fired, or repositioned in the organization. But the struggle is not, I promised you I'd be your friend. I promised you we'd be together forever. I promised you we were a family, right? And family doesn't do that to each other. And so now everything gets weird versus saying, no, it is okay for you to, in love, make a decision as a boss in a friendly way, versus trying to have the dual relationship. And so in the book, he says not all dual relationships can be eliminated. And I don't think the Bible makes the case that all dual relationships should be gone. We see that Moses and his family were in leadership together, with Israel. And so, but they need to be monitored very closely. And I think for me, I was adopting a leadership model that started to use language like family and being synonymous with team, or, shying away from language like I'm your boss because, I don't want to be your boss. Let's
be friends.
Yeah. Let's be friends on this journey together. And it's very difficult to live out. You're better off just putting that boss hat on and say, okay, I'm going to be the best boss you've ever had. I'm going to be friendly, fatherly, brotherly, but I'm still going to do what you would expect any good boss to do.
So a lot of leaders have a heart for people. And so this conversation we're having may be very difficult for them to accept. And even if they accept it mentally, it'd be hard for them to practice. Any thoughts around how they wrestle through that?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, as we're wrapping up this episode, I think the hardest part about putting this into practice is that I would believe that if I don't keep you in my organization and keep you in my discipleship vehicles, that you won't be loved and taken care of, right? And I only see myself as the sole source of your development, so I have to keep you around and try to find a place for you, right? I believe that the reality is God has given the person I'm trying to love, he's given them a friend, maybe a companion, the government, right? Mom and dad, the local church, and then a boss. And I am one of those 5 roles that you need inside of your life. And if I were to discipline you, fire you, reposition you, or challenge you in any sort of way, I'm hopefully pushing you back into the hands of a loving God that will love you through the other vehicles that you have. Even if you get another boss, what if our relationship ends and now you get another boss and God is still going to love you and take care of you, and I don't have to be that sole source. And so I guess if I had to summarize, what would make this easier is, especially if you're a Christian and you love your employees, you got to co-labor with God for their personal development. Whatever personal development, talent management system you have, it has to be something that's co-laboring with what God is doing. And it's not a godless system where you're not acknowledging that God is going to do something in that person's life, so you think you have to do it all. And I think that's what I was operating under. If I don't do it, it's not going to happen. And that's just simply not true. I need to put them, what the scripture says, one person sows, one person waters, God provides the growth. One person sows, one person waters, God provides the growth. I am but one of these components. And so I trust that if we're together, if you're my employee for 6 months or 6 years, I'm just going to sow and water and be faithful over those 6 months or 6 years, knowing and expecting that I will not always be in your life. I probably won't be the person to reap. I might not be the person to be in the next stage of your life, but I do trust that in our short interaction, God will have done something that has laid the groundwork for something greater in the future. But love does not always look like you staying attached to me and me not disciplining you. Love could take a different form, and and I think the most empathetic people that might struggle with this are the best people to be in the position to steward their authority and their power well and step into that role as a boss.
They care about the people so much.
Because they care.
I had a leader of a worldwide religious organization tell me there's a lot of weight in being a leader. One of the weights he was very concerned about was he felt like he'd have to give an account before God on how he stewarded the people in his organization worldwide. He said one of his biggest concerns was, did he bring somebody onto the team that shouldn't have been because he cheated them from where they were supposed to be? Or did he keep them on the team too long because they weren't part of the other thing, the next step they were supposed to do in life? And so he carried that weight. Like, he was constantly aware of, should I have invited you on the team, or were you destined to be someplace else and I messed that up?
Yeah. I always think of there's people who I want to be on my team for selfish reasons because they're talented. And if you read a lot of business books, they'll teach you about retention. But some of the retention strategies are borderline manipulation strategies to keep your star players with you, which there's a line there, and we could talk about that. But to your point, if God wants you somewhere else, I don't want you here. I think of the story of Jonah. God wanted Jonah somewhere else, and he was on a boat. Everyone on that boat was suffering, right? I think about all the stories where God has told people to take the gold and put it into his temple, but instead they hold on to it. And the scripture is very clear that you've taken things that were consecrated for me and you've held them for yourself. Now you invite judgment. And so the phrase I use for my employees, the way I tell it to them, is I don't want you to leave a day sooner than you're supposed to leave. So I'm going to make this place the best place to work. I'm going to try to hold on to you. I don't want you to leave a day sooner than you're actually supposed to leave. And conversely, I don't want you here a day longer than you're supposed to be gone. And so at some point in time, you're going to get a job offer that both of us know you need to take, right? You're going to hit a life stage where both of us know that there's another decision out there. And it's going to be difficult because, again, I just told you, I don't want you to leave a day sooner. So I'm going to try to do everything I can to sweeten the pot and have you to stay here. I'm going to be upfront about that. I'm going to fight for you. But at the same time, I don't want you here a day longer. And so there's that tension there. And that's how I explain it to them. But really in the back of my mind, if I have a deeper conversation, I'll dig down and say, I know that God has an amazing plan for your life. We've done your strengths assessment. We've mapped out your 5-year plan. We see how Mathnaism does and doesn't fit into that. I think we're now, going to reach a point where, you need to go off and do your other thing. And so just speaking vision into their life and being honest about, like, I know this is not a long-term or lifelong, this might not be a lifelong relationship, but I want to love you into that next chapter, not too soon, but definitely not forever or not too long.
That's good.
Yeah.
Lashaude, always words of wisdom, especially for a guy as young as you. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
And pleasure having you on the show again. We'll have you back soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.